Welcome to State of the State. I'm Darlene and I'm in conversation with Sarah Viera. Sarah is the founder of Rhode Island Fair Elections. This is a nonpartisan group, and she's here to talk to us about ranked voting, amongst other things. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
It's great.
Let's start with your background.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a lifelong resident of Rhode Island, and I'm a mom. I have 3 children. I'm a wife. I work full time. And I never had any political aspirations. I just knew it was important to vote, and my husband as well. And we've always had pretty lively conversations around the dinner table about voting with our children and how important it is to have that that right that's been given to us to be able to vote, and really thinking it's important to have them involved in the process. So I'd always bring them with me, even when they were on the stroller in a baby carriage, bringing all of them with me to vote. They knew all the women that were there at our local precinct to vote, and they always got their stickers, of course. That was very exciting. And it's just been kind of ingrained in myself with my parents as well, that that's at least one thing I can do to be able to stay involved in my local government.
How old are your children?
My daughter's 19.
Oh, so she's voting.
She's voting now. So it's very exciting for her. When she turned 18, it was very exciting to get her voter registration card. My other daughter's 17, so she's
so surely going to vote soon.
On the cusp. And my son is 14.
Okay.
So he is very civic-minded, if you will. He loves debating, and I think that's kind of been ingrained in what we've been teaching him at home. It's nice to have those lively discussions, whether you agree or disagree. That's part of why we live in this country, is being able to have those discussions with other people. So that's my backstory, and I was starting to ask questions a few years ago of what's been going on in Rhode Island, and trying to figure out how to get involved. I didn't really necessarily want to get politically involved. I just really wanted to find out what's happening with our elections. So I went to my local board and I asked my local clerk questions, and she was lovely. She really was excited that someone was coming in asking her questions about, well, what's a poll watcher? What does that mean? How do I become a poll watcher, which we'll talk about.
Well, actually, what is a poll watcher for our audience?
Great. So a poll watcher are those people, when you go vote, that sit behind the desk and check you in, making sure you have your ballot, making sure all the equipment is working correctly. And it's actually a paid position, which I did not know when I first started. And you can apply through the Secretary of State or even your local clerk. They have applications. You can apply. It's very easy. And they do an online, I guess it's a Zoom, like a video conference where they educate you on how to be a poll worker.
It's like a training course?
Like a training. And then you're all set to be a poll worker. So part of our group is really encouraging people to understand what a poll worker is. I did not know what that meant when I first started, so I think that's part of our process as well, as educating.
So is there a term for a poll watcher?
So a poll worker is, so there are poll watchers too, which I didn't know that. So I didn't know that when I went to my local clerk either. A poll worker is a paid position. You're those people that are behind the desks. You're making sure all the equipment's working properly. You're making sure everybody that's coming in goes on the poll pads and signing. A poll watcher.
Well, actually, so the worker, is there a term?
No. There's just you can just apply to be a poll worker, and then there's certain titles.
Do you work in your district?
You don't have to.
Okay.
You don't have to. Typically, people like to, but you do not have to. Let's say you wanted to get involved in the races coming up for this November. If you work in a town that doesn't necessarily is not in Congressional District 1, you can certainly apply if they need someone to work the polls. Could certainly see if that's available. Actually, we know positions are available, so I would encourage people to apply for those positions. We really want people that want to start getting involved in their local government.
Okay. Now, if there are not enough poll watchers or workers at a particular, I guess, polling place, precinct,
Yeah.
What happens then? Do we know?
We don't know. I know that they've had, in the past, they've had temporary workers use those positions. I do not know what's going to happen with this election. I know in the past 2 cycles they've used temporary workers, if you will. And that's all I know about that.
Are they trained?
They're supposed to be trained.
Okay.
Yes.
So now what's a watcher, a poll watcher?
So a poll watcher, which who knew? I didn't know this was a thing, is someone that you can volunteer. It is a volunteer position. You will go to whatever party, or say there's a special candidate that you would like to help, and that works with a certain party. You would contact the political party that you would like to watch the polls, and it's a volunteer position where you're one of the people that you're not necessarily checking people in. You're kind of on the side at one of those other side tables that they had, and you're just observing and making sure the processes are being followed by the law, making sure the people that are getting registered are actually registrants of that precinct. So you can volunteer for however long you would like to be at that position. You don't have to stay there, whereas a poll worker, you have to stay there the whole day.
Okay, so now what is the process?
For a poll watcher?
Well, no, a person coming in who's going to vote. So they're watching the process.
Yes.
What is the process supposed to look like?
When you're coming in to vote for the process, you should be coming in to vote, right? Is that what you're asking me for, like the people that are coming in?
Right, so the watchers are watching what? Someone's coming in, they're showing their identification.
Yes, they're making sure they're showing their identification, making sure that they're registering on the poll pad, and if there's any problems, they should have a notebook or a book in front of them as well that they can keep notes on. Jane Smith came to vote, okay, she voted, were there any problems? They're keeping that running log for the political party to let them know, this many people showed up at the precinct. This person didn't show up, maybe we should call and make sure they're okay. Do they need a ride? Those kinds of things.
Okay.
So that's what you're doing as a poll watcher. You're helping the political party get out the vote, if you will.
And so you mentioned registration that day?
No, they don't register that day.
Okay, I thought you said that, so that I wanted to follow up with that.
No.
Okay, so who else is there at the precinct?
For voting? Yeah, so you have all your poll supervisors.
Okay.
And they all have different positions.
Okay.
That is determined when you sign up. There's a poll supervisor, and then you just have poll workers. So you have someone supervising all of the people underneath you, if you will.
Okay.
And then you should have a poll watcher as well. Usually one from each party.
Okay.
Should be at every precinct.
Okay. What now? What does our voting look like now, and what raised an eyebrow for you, I suppose?
What raised an eyebrow was when I went to my local clerk and I had questions, and I asked about, I was just explaining to you all the different roles because I didn't know. And I also asked about voter rolls, and that's really what piqued my interest a couple years ago was, what is a voter roll? What does that mean? How do you maintain them? What happens with voters? And she was really, every time I had a question, she'd always been able to spend time with me, and if she didn't know the answer, she would try to find for me. So that was a great experience because that started opening my eyes, and I started asking more questions. And if you can get your voter rolls for your town, any town. You can ask for an information request, public records request, or an APRA, that's what we call it in Rhode Island. And you can ask for an APRA just to ask, can I have my voter rolls, please? And they should be able to give those to you locally. And you can.
So you know who's voting, or who's
you know
registered
who's
to vote?
voting,
Okay.
right? But you don't. It's a public record when you're voting. It's not something that should be a private thing. You can access that even through the Secretary of State as well. You do have to pay a fee, but you can access the public records for the state as well through an APRA. And what we did was I just kind of looked in my neighborhood because we knew who voted and who didn't vote or who moved, and I started looking at my voter rolls, and that started giving me some more questions about maybe why is John Smith still on my voter roll? Why is he moved he moved 10 years ago to Connecticut. He's not coming back. Why is he still on my voter roll? And I'd go to my local clerk and I'd ask her well, why is John Smith still on the voter roll? Oh, I don't know why. And then we'd start that conversation of trying to get him, because we knew we moved to Connecticut, getting him off the voter roll. There is a process for that that you follow by law.
And who follows that?
Your local clerk should be following that.
Okay, so if you bring to the clerk's attention that this person is out of state now,
yes,
should not be on this voter roll, there's a process then to remove that person.
You can't just go and say, hey, John Smith moved. There's an absolute process that you follow through election law. All of our election law is housed under Title 17 in Rhode Island. And so you can look under that and see how do we remove people that have moved out of state. Typically when you move out of state, people forget to remove themselves from the voter roll. You remember to take yourself off for mailing, but not necessarily for the voter roll. So that was something that started a lot of us as volunteers to ask questions in certain towns and being able to look at our voter rolls. And our voter rolls should be, I always explain it like a checkbook. It should be accurate. So when you're able to look at your checkbook, you're able to reconcile all of your debits, your additions, your deposits. You're able to that should be even, right? And it's the same thing as a voter roll. A voter roll should be even. It should be however many people are at that house. So if you have 2 people living at the house and they're 2 registered voters, then the voter roll should reconcile with that, and you should have 2 voters at that address. What I was finding in my town was that wasn't always the case. There were still people that have moved 10, 20 years ago. I still had people that passed away, that I knew passed away, that were still on my voter roll 3, 4 years ago. I also had, which was interesting, businesses. So I found out that you can't have a business on your voter roll, it should be a residence. What we did do, just to make sure, was to go into a business, because sometimes a business can have an apartment or some kind of residence in the back or upstairs. We would make sure when we went to a business, hey, we noticed that you have 2 registered voters at this business. Why do you have 2 registered voters? And do you have an apartment? Typically, that was not the case. It was just 2 registered voters. They didn't know who they were.
Who didn't know who they were?
The business people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Okay, and a little frightening, I'm sure.
Yes, it was for them.
Yeah.
And that happened a few times. It was a pizza place, a storage facility, a nail salon, a barber shop, an auto place. So that was something else that was a little concerning for me, because I was told that it was supposed to be look like a checkbook, supposed to be accurate, right? And always I went back to my local clerk, and she didn't know why they're on the voter roll, but she definitely helped me remove them from my voter roll, so our voter rolls in our town, which was great, because I felt like, oh, okay, I'm doing something. Okay, this is great. I'm helping my local clerk, and she's got a lot on her plate. And I'm able to help her remove these people that shouldn't be there.
What are the ramifications if they're not removed, these names are not removed, or there's voters listed at businesses? What do you think the ramifications are?
If they're not removed, then that would need to be followed up, because under Title 17 of our election law, it has to be a domicile, so it has to be a residence.
Well, what I'm asking, I guess, is there potential for fraud?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
I don't like to go there because that gets a little prickly with people, but
okay,
yes.
Why? How come?
I'm not sure why people get prickly about that, but I care about my town, and I think most people that live in their town would want that to be accurate.
Yeah.
But not in my town. My town was very nice about trying to remove those voters and making sure that wasn't happening.
Okay, so that there was election integrity.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But there are other things that people should be questioning, and that's kind of what we've been educating Rhode Island voters about, or Rhode Islanders about, is really understanding if you want to get involved locally. Okay. Look at your town. This is all public information that you can ask for, and really trying to clean up your own voter rolls, and you're helping your town clerk, who's got a lot on her plate. And it makes it just, if you're doing your civic duty as well, I feel like, that we're helping out.
What should the voter know who does not have a permanent address, or may have just lost a home, doesn't have a residence? What would you advise them to do?
So typically, if someone doesn't have a home, you can go to your local clerk
Yep.
and explain the situation. You can use the town hall, your
Excellent.
local hall, as a residence. I know that we have some homeless people that do that, and they use the town hall as a residence, if you will, and that's perfectly fine under the law.
Yep. And people need to know that.
Yeah,
Right?
because I didn't
Okay.
know that.
I did.
Yes, but I didn't. It's been eye-opening and very
Yeah.
educational for me, because I didn't know these things, and
Yeah.
I feel like if I didn't know these things, I don't like to assume other people know them.
Okay, so what else? Raised an eyebrow or opened your eyes?
So other things that opened my eyes were that people didn't know what I'm explaining to you now. So when we go around different parts of Rhode Island, we've really been encouraging people to be a poll watcher and what that means and what it looks like, what a poll watcher, a poll worker. And we didn't get to talk about nursing home supervisors as well, because
Yeah, let's talk about that.
that's very important for vulnerable voters,
Okay.
making sure that you...
Why would you call them vulnerable?
That's just what they call the elderly people that are in vulnerable voters is kind of like a catch-all, if you will,
Okay.
of a category of people such as vulnerable voters would be the elderly, people in group homes, veterans, homeless people. They kind of all in that catch-all, if you will, that they're more vulnerable to people possibly taking advantage of them because of loopholes. And so we really want to make sure that we have people that are going into the nursing homes that have been trained and will help them vote however they want to vote.
Okay, so what loopholes would you be referring to?
For loopholes for the law is being able to make sure that those loopholes that for vulnerable voters, let's talk about the nursing homes, for instance. There should be a person from each party going in, so that's why it's bipartisan,
Okay.
a bipartisan party going into the nursing homes, and making sure that that opportunity is there. We don't want that loophole to be opened, if you will. So that's what I meant by that.
All right.
Yeah.
What else? Before we move on to what you're actually doing, what your organization is doing.
Yes, of course. So the other thing we've been, just my part of our journey for our organization is getting involved nationally as well. So we can talk about getting involved nationally with other groups and what they're finding with their elections as well has been really important. Other grassroots organizations. We are connected with a few different groups nationally that target certain, like I was just explaining to you, vulnerable voters, how we can make sure that their vote counts. There's a group talking about voter rolls, which is very important, and across the states, and really figuring out what state has found certain things. Well, maybe that's happening in Rhode Island as well. Maybe we should look at that. There's a group that works on ranked choice voting, which is something I know we've talked about as well.
So what is that?
Ranked choice voting?
Yes.
So ranked choice voting is a initiative being started. Really only 2 states right now have ranked choice voting.
Maine and Alaska.
Maine and Alaska. There are some certain municipalities across the United States that have tried ranked choice voting, such as San Francisco in California. Virginia just tried in one of their municipal elections as well this past cycle, this spring, I believe. So there have been some pockets. Washington, D.C. has tried ranked choice voting as well. And ranked choice voting, it's not necessarily a new concept, but it's kind of getting it rejuvenated, if you will, to rank your voters, basically. So you would have to go into a booth, and however many people are for that race, you have to vote and rank, basically.
So if there's 5 candidates,
Yes.
you would sort of vote for them in order of your preference.
Yes.
Okay.
And you'd have to vote for all of the people that are in that category, no matter what party.
Okay.
So that's basically ranked choice voting, how you go into the booth and do that. And you have to get so much of a percentage of the vote.
Do you know the percentage?
Oh boy, I don't.
Okay.
And I don't want to misquote myself.
Okay.
But you do have to get a certain percentage of the vote. That's not necessarily the majority of the vote. They, because of the rankings, then they take away because if you don't meet that certain percentage of the vote, let's say it's 30%. Okay. I'm not sure if it is, but let's just say if it's 30% of the vote, whoever got 30% of the vote, you stay in the race. If you didn't get 30% or below, and then you continue with the ranking, if you will.
For how many days?
However long it takes to be able to get to.
So this would be a multi-step voting process. So we wouldn't go in one day. We would go in 2 or 3.
You could, yes, or you could. Typically, what other states have done have just done the one ballot, and then you just kind of figure it out statistically. How many ballots make that ballot, and then if your ballot or your person that you voted for first place didn't make the cut, your ballot would be to the side, and then they have the rest of the votes to be able to work for. So it's not. I don't think you would be going in again and again and again. It's mostly just ranking and figuring out statistically what the next step would be for your next candidate, if you will. Okay. That's how it's been explained to me.
And so is there a problem with ranked choice voting?
From what I understand with ranked choice voting, it hasn't been successful. It's been very expensive to educate voters on the process for ranked choice voting. Not all voters will understand that they have to vote all 5, and if you don't vote all 5, your vote goes in the trash can, basically, because it's not eligible.
That's huge.
Yes,
that's
because
a huge
it's
loss.
Disenfranchising a lot of voters. It's gotten a lot of pushback, even from certain Democrat parties that have been wanting ranked choice voting. So that recently the Democrats from DC, I believe, said that they really pushed back on ranked choice voting. They have actually they did a press release on it and saying that they don't believe ranked choice voting is good for voters because it disenfranchises voters, particularly voters that might not speak English for their first language. Also, elderly voters that are not used to voting for ranked choice voting, their votes will get disenfranchised. So they actually discouraged ranked choice voting for that race. The Virginia race as well, that was this past spring, they did the same thing. It took a long time to get to the results of what they needed. It disenfranchised a lot of voters, and they actually had less voter turnout. So, which is why they're trying to repeal that process in Alaska, because, and I don't think they're going through that process right now in Maine, but I know in Alaska they're really trying to repeal it and to give voters a chance to be able to have that plurality voting again happen, because they found out that ranked choice voting is probably not the best choice for their state. You know, they have a state that has population, I think, that's less than ours, and they were the last ones to report on their election results. Oh, wow. So, why is that? It's because ranked choice voting takes a long time to be able to tabulate and to be able to understand who's actually the winner. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So now your organization was formed when?
We're kind of a new organization. We formed in January of 2023. We decided to have, well, we've had a coalition for 2 years, but then we decided, we really need to make this a little bit more formal and have a name and a website, and have social media so people can interact with us and have some events. And it's really taken off. People have really wanted to understand what's going on and being able to get involved in the process with their elections. We found that people, voter roll cleanup classes have really been popular, really. We get a lot of people that want to learn how to do that in their own town. So that's been encouraging for us. We also have some Title 17 classes we've done as well, which really
Let's tell the audience what that is.
Sure. So Title 17 is our election law in Rhode Island. It's how we govern all of our parts of our elections, from election tabulation equipment, what I was just explaining to you with the rolls for poll workers. There are statutes for that. Even a poll watcher, you have a law for that. Nursing home supervisors, we follow Title 17. Mail ballots, those are a very big portion of Title 17 that has a section or a chapter, if you will, on mail ballots. And we really use that to educate voters on where to look for law. So if you want to understand more about mail ballots, It's right there. You can look it up online. It's really, to access it, how I find it all the time is I tell people go to Rhode Island Legislature, our government webpage, and you can find any law. Obviously, we're very informed about our elections in this talk we're having right now, and we explain and show people how to access it on that government website through Title 17. And it's been for me, I did not know about Title 17 or how to look for that information, so I find it rewarding when I can share that information with other people, that this is easy to find, you can find it, you don't have to wonder or worry, or it's all right here. It tells you exactly what you should be doing.
We have 5 minutes left.
Oh,
yeah. So I'm going to give you the floor. What else did you come? What else do you want to share?
Okay. So I know I talked a lot about voter rolls because I feel like it's very important.
Okay.
And I also think if anybody watching today would love to get involved with our group, we are very active. We have a lot of events that we like to have around the state. I was just explaining to you, the voter roll classes have been a real hit, if you will. We get a lot of people that like to come to those. But we also do a class on election law. And we also are trying to get involved with some other groups around the state. So if anybody would like us to come speak and educate your group, or if you have a grassroots group in Rhode Island that you'd like us to talk to, we would love to do that. We are very visible on Facebook and Twitter and all of those other accounts as well, to be able to disperse information quickly. And we also have state coalition meetings where we meet once a week and we talk about issues that are coming up in our elections, whether we think we have enough poll workers, are we encouraging people enough, what other issues do people want us to talk about or research. So if anybody would like to join our state coalition meetings that we have twice a month, we meet in person, or we have like a Zoom or a video conferencing that we use as well, a format.
When is your next meeting?
I believe it will be next week.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, I'm trying to think of the weeks. So we have one every other week. We meet for about an hour, and we also have someone that comes nationally to join our groups as well, just to make sure we are, what's going on around the nation, and keeps us informed about, okay, did you guys look at this piece of voter rolls, or this piece with, making sure the vulnerable voters or nursing homes are being adequately, with what I was explaining to you earlier with the nursing home supervisors, making sure that there's enough people that are going in and looking at all the issues that we might have with our elections that we're not looking at, because there's so many facets to look at and talk about. So that's really neat too, to have someone that has has a different perspective, if you will, a different way to look at our elections that we might not be looking at, because we get so locally focused here.
When is your next educational class? Do you know off the top of your head?
Typically we have them on Saturdays,
okay.
And I don't know off the top of my head. You'll have to check the website for updates, or you can email us as well.
Okay.
If you don't want to look at our website, we have an email. You can go to, I believe it's rifairelections@protonmail.com.
Okay, and our audience can find you at rhodeislandfairelections.com, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you,
you.
Sarah. Thank you for watching. This is Darlene Durezzo from State of the State. Please look for us on social media. We have a new Instagram account that is @StateOfTheStateRI. Thanks for watching.